While you were checking Rightmove listings this morning, while you were scrolling past another headline about interest rates, while you were convincing yourself that maybe next year would finally be the year you get on the property ladder, something shifted beneath the surface of the UK housing market, and almost nobody caught it happening. This is the story that estate agents will not tell you, that mainstream news glossed over in 30 seconds, and that could reshape how millions of people in Britain live, rent, buy, and retire over the coming decade. So if you have not already, hit subscribe to UK Housing Watch right now, because we break down these developments daily, and missing even one update could mean missing your window entirely. Let us start with what actually happened, because the data that dropped quietly last month painted a picture so alarming that I had to read it 3 times to believe it, and yet somehow it barely made the evening news. Rental demand across England and Wales has not just increased, it has exploded to levels we have never recorded before, with some regions seeing 40 applicants fighting over a single property within hours of it being listed on Zoopla or Rightmove. But wait, here is the part nobody is talking about. This is not just happening in London anymore. Cities like Manchester, Birmingham, Bristol, Leeds, and even smaller towns in the Midlands that used to be considered affordable alternatives are now experiencing the exact same pressure cooker conditions that priced out an entire generation from the capital. The mathematics of this situation are brutal, and they affect everyone differently depending on where they stand on the property ladder, or more accurately, how far away from it they are standing while watching it pull further out of reach. First-time buyers are facing a perfect storm that makes the challenges of 5 years ago look almost quaint by comparison. The average deposit needed has climbed again. Mortgage rates remain stubbornly elevated compared to the historic lows people got used to. And here is the cruel twist. Even those who have saved diligently and done everything right are being outbid by cash buyers or finding that the properties within their budget need so much work that the true cost spirals beyond what any lender will approve. Lenders have become increasingly cautious, stress-testing applications against rates that feel almost punitive, and the result is a generation of would-be homeowners trapped in rental properties, watching their deposit funds get eaten away by rent increases that show no sign of slowing. Now let us talk about renters specifically, because their situation has deteriorated faster than almost any housing analyst predicted. The average rent in England has climbed to record levels, but that headline figure actually masks something more disturbing when you dig into the regional breakdowns. In competitive markets, tenants are being asked to offer above the listed rent just to secure a viewing. Bidding wars that used to be reserved for property purchases are now commonplace in the rental sector, and landlords are receiving so many applications that they can cherry-pick tenants with perfect credit scores, the highest incomes, and the most sterling references, leaving anyone with even minor complications in their history struggling to find anywhere to live at all. But here is where it gets really interesting, and this is the second twist that the mainstream coverage completely missed. The supply side of this equation is collapsing at the exact moment demand is surging, and that collapse is largely being driven by decisions made in Westminster over the past several years. Buy-to-let landlords are exiting the market in record numbers, selling up properties that then either get purchased by owner-occupiers, which helps some first-time buyers but removes rental stock, or get snapped up by larger institutional investors who manage them differently and often at higher price points. The tax changes that removed mortgage interest relief, the additional stamp duty surcharge on second properties, the incoming requirements around EPC ratings that will force expensive retrofitting, and the general sense that landlords have become politically convenient targets have combined to make thousands of small-scale property investors conclude that the numbers simply do not work anymore. A landlord in Sheffield told me last week that after 30 years of providing rental housing, maintaining properties to good standards, and building relationships with long-term tenants, she is selling her entire portfolio of 6 properties because the regulatory burden, the tax treatment, and the constant threat of further restrictions have made it impossible to justify. Continuing, each of those 6 properties will need new tenants to find somewhere else to live during the transition, and multiply that story by tens of thousands, and you start to understand why the rental market feels like it is seizing up. Homeowners who already own their properties might think they are insulated from this chaos, but that assumption is dangerously wrong. And here comes the third revelation that caught me off guard when I connected the dots. The value of your property is increasingly disconnected from the reality of what buyers can actually afford to pay for it. Yes, house prices have shown resilience, and yes, in nominal terms, many homeowners are sitting on significant equity gains from the past decade. but the pool of buyers who can actually transact at these prices is shrinking. Mortgage affordability calculations have tightened dramatically. The Bank of England base rate decisions ripple through to what lenders will offer, and the result is a market that is starting to show the classic signs of illiquidity, properties sitting on the market longer, price reductions becoming more common, and a growing gap between what sellers expect and what buyers can deliver. For homeowners who need to sell, perhaps because of divorce, job relocation, downsizing and retirement, or simply because life circumstances have changed, this creates genuine difficulty. You cannot eat equity, and if you cannot convert that theoretical value into an actual sale at a price that works for your next move, then the paper wealth becomes frustratingly abstract. Pensioners and retirees face their own unique version of this crisis, and I want to spend a moment on this because it rarely gets the attention it deserves. Many older homeowners are asset-rich but cash-poor, living in family homes that have appreciated enormously, but finding that their fixed incomes cannot keep pace with rising council tax bills, energy costs, maintenance requirements, and the general expense of simply existing in modern Britain. The obvious solution, downsizing to release equity, runs straight into the problems we have already discussed. Suitable smaller properties in desirable areas are scarce and expensive. The transaction costs, including stamp duty, eat into the released funds, and the emotional difficulty of leaving a family home after decades gets compounded by a market that makes the practical execution of that decision enormously stressful. Some pensioners are turning to equity release products, essentially borrowing against their home to fund retirement, but these products come with compound interest that can dramatically reduce the inheritance they leave behind and create complications if they later need to fund care home fees. Here is twist number 4, and this one should concern everyone, regardless of where they sit in the housing ecosystem. New build completions have fallen off a cliff compared to what was promised and what the country actually needs. Planning delays have reached absurd levels in many local authorities, with applications sitting in queues for months or even years while housing need continues to compound. Developers are mothballing sites because the economics of building have shifted dramatically. Construction costs have risen, labor remains scarce in skilled trades, and the uncertainty about what the market will look like when units are actually ready for sale makes committing capital feel increasingly risky. The government target of building hundreds of thousands of new homes per year remains laughably distant from reality, and every year of underbuilding adds to the accumulated deficit that future generations will somehow need to address. The permissions that do get granted often face local opposition that adds further delays, and the result is a system that everyone agrees is broken, but that nobody seems capable of actually fixing. Infrastructure struggles to keep pace with the development that does happen. Schools become oversubscribed. GP surgeries cannot take new patients. Roads become congested, and communities that were promised careful management of growth instead feel overwhelmed by changes that arrive without the supporting investment that was supposed to accompany them. Now I need to tell you about the 5th, and perhaps most concerning twist, the one that explains why this crisis got worse without the coverage it deserved. The data we rely on to understand the housing market has become increasingly difficult to interpret in real time. Transaction volumes have dropped significantly, which means the price indices based on completed sales are working with smaller sample sizes and longer lag times. What the market was doing 3 months ago might bear little resemblance to what is happening right now, but by the time the official figures catch up, the narrative has already been set. This is why you might see headlines declaring that house prices rose or fell by some percentage when the lived experience on the ground tells a completely different story.